English quiz. Opposite words. What's the opposite of term? The answer is short. What's the opposite of deep? The answer is shallow. What's the opposite of wide? The answer is narrow. What's the opposite of even? The answer is odd. What's the opposite of shiny? The answer is dull. What's the opposite of thick? The answer is thin. What's the opposite of fast? The answer is slow. What's the opposite of hard? The answer is easy. What's the opposite of light? The answer is dark. What's the opposite of liquid? The answer is solid. What's the opposite of natural? The answer is artificial. What's the opposite of up? The answer is down. What's the opposite of open? The answer is closed. What's the opposite of tight? The answer is loose. What's the opposite of more? The answer is less. What's the opposite of on? The answer is off. What's the opposite of night? The answer is day. What's the opposite of good? The answer is bad. What's the opposite of happy? The answer is sad. What's the opposite of weak? The answer is strong. What's the opposite of inside? The answer is outside. What's the opposite of left? The answer is right. What's the opposite of heavy? The answer is light. What's the opposite of rich? The answer is poor. What's the opposite of start? The answer is end. What's the opposite of visible? The answer is invisible. What's the opposite of man? The answer is woman. What's the opposite of rude? The answer is polite. What's the opposite of top? The answer is bottom. What's the opposite of truth? The answer is lie. What's the opposite of useful? The answer is useless. What's the opposite of friend? The answer is enemy. What's the opposite of sweet? The answer is sour. What's the opposite of tiny? The answer is huge. What's the opposite of victory? The answer is defeat.